everybody, and welcome back to Riders Blockbuster. My name is Creed, and if you like children's games that are turned deadly, anime clowns with over-the-top fights and colors, and mathematics, then I definitely think you should watch the 2018 movie titled Animal World.
Mathematical!
As always, there will be spoilers in this breakdown, but it is currently streaming on Netflix, so go ahead and check it out there. I'll put a link in the description too, just so it's a little easier to find. But yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. The main character, Zhong, is down on his luck and money is tight. He's currently working as a clown when he's approached by one of his childhood friends named Li. Something really fun that this movie does is show when the characters are in emotional distress. And the way that Zhong copes is by imagining himself as this anime clown that he saw when he was like 8 years old as a child that's tied with another incredibly traumatic memory. So every time he has bad emotions, negative emotions, bad memories at all, he immediately goes back to imagining himself as this clown that is able to kill these monstrosities that have beautiful, like, colorful blood spewing everywhere, just greens and blues and purples. It's really fun, it's really cool. They're always over-the-top fights, and this time it ends on a train, and then of course we see it's all in his head. Li is there asking if Zhong will sell his late father's condo in exchange for a business opportunity in which they will both be able to split $12 million. Of course, Zhong says no at first, but we learn that he is trying to date this girl, his mother's in the hospital, he's just down on his luck in general, and eventually money is too tight, and he realizes that if he was incredibly rich, most of his problems would just go away, right? He's having a lot of issues, and it's all because he has no money to his name. We see him always playing like Sudokus, he's always playing games, so we can tell that nothing is grabbing his attention long enough for him to think that it's like interesting or fulfilling in any way. So he hasn't been holding down decent jobs or anything like that. So Zhong takes a couple of days to think about it, and eventually he agrees to Li's idea. He mortgages his father's apartment, he gives the entire $3 million sum to Li, and then a few days later, Zhong gets a call from Li, and Li's just saying, I'm so sorry, I'll make it up to you. And then he starts shouting. We hear people tackle him to the ground, we hear his phone just go dead. We know that Li has now been like kidnapped or something. He's been taken. He's been taken 5 Animal World, right? So something's going on with Li. We're definitely not getting any of that money back. Later at the hospital, we see the same cyberpunk looking dude that Li was talking with when they were first talking about their business proposition. He ends up taking Zhong to a man named Anderson, and Anderson tells Zhong about what's really happened and what is really happening now. He tells him that Li gambled off the deed for his father's apartment, and now that debt is going to fall on Zhong as well as on Li, of course, but Li doesn't have any money to his name. He's got less than Zhong, so it's gonna fall on Zhong entirely. And so Anderson ends up laying down the math. He says that Zhong will have to work for 30 years, he'll have to work 4 full-time jobs in order to pay off the debt from the deed, but then he offers Zhong a way out. Alright, and this is where the movie comes into play. He says that in a few days there's going to be a cruise ship that will set out. On the ship, they will be playing a game, and during the game they will have the opportunity to pay off any and all debts that they may have occurred. And, not seeing any other option, seeing a pretty sweet deal here, potentially sweet deal, he doesn't really know what's coming, Zhong snatches the ticket up, he agrees to go on the cruise, he says, yep, let's do it. Zhong wakes up on the ship and is directed to the gambling room. The room is incredibly elegant, like there's a tiger that's just sitting above a timer and a counter of some kind, there's a bunch of gambling tables scattered throughout, there's even a bank for players to use at their own discretion, and we'll see that come into play a little bit later. However, they also mention every single loan that you take, the interest is going to accrue by the minute. So it's not your usual interest rate, this is very different, this is really high stakes. And then Anderson tells everyone what they will be doing tonight. He says they are going to be playing an incredibly high stakes rock, paper, scissors tournament. Each contestant is given 12 cards, what's the math there? I don't do the math, 4. 4 of each, 4 rock, 4 paper, 4 scissors, and they're also given 3 Yu-Gi-Oh style star chips.
It's time to duel!
Each hand will reward the winner with a star chip from the loser, and then they will discard the cards that were used in the battle. The goal of the night is to get rid of all of the cards before the timer gets to 0, while also ending the night with a total of at least 3 star chips. If they have less than 3 star chips or any cards remaining at the end of the night, then they will be indebted for the rest of their lives, but if they are able to have those 3 star chips and no cards remaining, then they will be completely wiped debt-free. Zhong meets number 004, who also happens to speak Chinese, so they become really fast friends. And number 4 has a brilliant idea. He says, I've got an idea that will get us both out of here. We can both keep all of our star chips and then get rid of our cards. All we have to do is draw against each other. You play a rock, I play a rock. Boom. Both of those cards go away. We each keep our 3 star chips. You play a scissors, I play a scissors. Boom. So they have this plan to just tie each other until they get out. This goes well for a few rounds, but then number 004 slips. He plays the wrong card on accident and he wins the round. He pulls Zhong to the side and he says, hey, it was an accident. Next round, like, well, I'll make it up to you. You play this card, I'll play this card. You'll win my star chip back. You know, we'll be hunky-dory by the end of it. And of course, he ends up playing the wrong card again, winning a second round in a row. And then Zhong, you know, he realizes that number 004 was just after his chips. He did not really want to help Zhong in any meaningful way, and Zhong starts to have a complete freak out. During this freak out, we can tell that Zhong is scared, right? He is constantly like frozen, he's constantly cold. In it, he is tossed off of the boat into space where he's helpless, into a frozen lake where he just cannot move, where he's frozen to his core, and then finally he's able to wake up from his hallucination. And when he does wake up, he actually sees that Li is also on this cruise. Li confesses to Zhong that he's a gambling addict, that he thought it was his time to finally win, that he's in like mountains and mountains of debt, and then they end up just deciding to team up together. Zhong is the kind of guy who always gives people the benefit of the doubt, and we will see that come into play later, and will it bite him in the butt? Who knows, who knows? Zhong soon realizes that rock, paper, scissors isn't entirely random. He notices that people like to keep a similar amount of each card in their hands, and this gives him an idea. However, in order to test the idea and in order to test the new plan, Zhong and Li have to team up with someone who has at least 2 star chips so that they can try the strategy with a little bit of a safety net, because both of them are down to a single star chip, having both been victims now of people who have come and played this game before, who targeted the newbies, who took their stars from them. They search the ship and they end up finding number 042. He's a man who has 2 star chips remaining, but he's used up all of his cards. 042's best option now is to team up with Zhong and Li so that he can use their cards and so that they can use his chips. There's a nice little compromise there. However, the moment that they step out of the door, 042 runs away and immediately betrays them. He shows that he actually stole one of Zhong's cards when he was looking at them, and he uses that card immediately at a table. And of course, he ends up losing the round. He loses one of his 2 remaining star chips, he earns himself a beating in the bathroom from Li, and after some discussion, 042 finally, he just apologizes. He says, hey, I've been betrayed a whole lot, and it kind of, you know, it clicks with Zhong and Li. It's like, yeah, we've also been betrayed. And he says, listen, I thought you guys were also going to trick me. I didn't know that you guys were, like, had been tricked as well. I thought you were just going to betray me. And they end up allowing him to still join in their trio, despite now him not having any cards, only having 1 chip, and having just a, you know, a sob story. The 3 of them end up scouting the floor, looking for someone who's played a rock and a scissors in a row, figuring that the next card they play will likely be a paper, which they can beat because Zhong has scissors. And the plan ends up working perfectly. They play the scissors and they win the round, but then their opponent gets mad. He's not done with them yet. So he challenged them to do 3 more rounds in a row, using the 3 remaining of their cards, all 3 of them he wants to play against. And Zhong ends up agreeing. He has 3 scissors in his hand, so he knows that his opponent is going to be caught off guard. And by the end of the 3rd round, we see that Zhong has won 2 out of the 3 rounds, and now our trio is up by 2 star chips. The game comes to an abrupt halt, and Anderson walks onto the floor, dragging a player behind him. See, one of the few rules that were given for the games was that the only way to rid yourself of cards had to be through playing or purchasing. It's revealed that this player tried flushing his cards down the toilet, breaking that rule, and earning himself a bullet-encrusted forehead. Boom, shot right in the head. This startles everyone else in the room, like they finally realize this is real. The stakes of tonight's game are more than what we possibly imagined. Zhong notices the card counter ticking down. He sees the rock, paper, scissors all going at different paces, and he notices that scissors seem to be going down slower than all the rest of them, so that gives him another idea. He goes to the bank and he ends up taking out a loan for $500,000, and then he tells his teammates to search the floor, buy cards from anyone who has a majority of rocks, you know, in their hands. So buy all the cards if they have them, but mostly buy the rocks. His plan is to wait until near the end of the night and watch to see when the counter for the scissors outnumbers the other 2. By having plenty of rocks in his pocket, Zhong will ensure a majority of victories on the final hours. Unfortunately, it seems that someone else is onto their plan. After an hour passes, the trio notice that the counter for scissors is suddenly rapidly dropping, and they realize that people must have started getting into more and more draws, which makes sense now because they were buying up all the papers, and that means someone else must be buying up all the rocks, leaving only scissors left to be playable. Li and 042 panic. They each take a stack of cards and a star chip and they head off to a table to play before all the scissors are gone and their hands are just worthless. They each are immediately beaten, and a third player approaches Zhong, and that's when we realize that this is the other team that was buying up all of the papers. This player is number 11, and he actually saw Zhong as he was taking out his loan, and he's been watching him ever since. He heard how large of a loan Zhong had taken out, and then he was like, I'm gonna follow this guy around. I want all of his money and his star chips. He offers to play one round against Zhong for all of his money and for the 3 remaining star chips on Zhong's team. And of course, Zhong agrees. He places his card on the table and he waits for number 11 to place his card down to lock in his choice before Zhong reveals that he knew what number 11's card was. He had been able to predict it just based off of the certainty that he ended up approaching Zhong and his team. So he knew that Zhong was collecting rocks, and so his team had collected papers, and now he assumed that Zhong's team only had rocks remaining, and Zhong didn't. He had his scissors in his back pocket from like way earlier on. It's one of his original cards. He still had his scissors. And so Zhong ends up showing, boom, he has the scissors. He cuts the card in half, they toss it into the discard bin, and Zhong takes the 3 star chips for him and his team. The night is nearing its end, and so the time to start our trio's play is now. They walk onto the floor ready to make their moves, but they're stopped because number 004, that guy that jerked from the beginning, decides to walk into the middle of the floor and make an announcement. 4 says that since the night is nearing its end, he's noticed that there are very few cards left in play. He then says that most people's cards are actually known to the other players as word spreads quickly, so poachers all know who to target. He then comes up with an idea. He says to everyone, let's place our cards in the center, and then we can shuffle them all together, and then we can deal them out again to each other, so that it's all random now. You'll keep the same amount of cards that you had, of course. You put one in, you only take one out, that kind of thing. So they can't get more cards than they ended up wanting, and they can't leave the cards behind, but it is allowed for them to shuffle them together. When everyone agrees, they see that Zhong and his team has been hoarding cards. He's got a stack way larger than any of the other players. And then of course, 4 has to get one final slide in. He throws all of Zhong's cards up in the air, scattering them all over the floor so that Zhong has to pick them up before he can start playing. After the shuffle is completed, Zhong notices that 4 is going after very specific people, and he suspects 4 has marked the cards, has marked some certain cards in some way. He asks one of the opponents if he can see the card, and then boom, it's just proof right there. The card is bent. 4 has definitely been cheating. He knows who to target. He knows what they've got. So now, of course, nobody trusts anyone, so Zhong comes up with another idea. He offers, since he has so many cards, he offers to lay 1 rock, 1 paper, 1 scissors face down on the table in a random order. This is becoming more and more like Yu-Gi-Oh! As I'm reading the script right now. It's like becoming more and more like Yu-Gi-Oh! I've just noticed. Anyway, the cards will be randomly placed, they'll be shuffled around, but the three will be there. Rock, paper, and scissors will be there. And now the opponent will place their card down, and they will get to choose whichever of the 3 of Zhong's card gets played. So they won't know what they're choosing. It will still be a random draw, but this is at least more fair because now it doesn't matter if anybody knows what card you have because you are selecting your opponent's card. You're not selecting your own anymore. The last few minutes of the night are ticking down, and number 4 is yet to get rid of all of his cards. No one wants to play with him anymore. Nobody thinks that he's legit. He's revealed as a cheat. Nobody thinks he's worthy of playing or helping out in any way. But of course, Zhong offers to play around with him. He agrees to take the final card, but he forces number 4 to give 5 stars to his team for playing. He also makes 4 hit himself over and over and over in the face until he bleeds. So, that's pretty neat. But 4 agrees with the one stipulation. The stipulation is that if 4 wins, Zhong has to go to the loser's room, to the black room, to the place where he will most likely end up having to stay for the rest of his life. The stars do not align for Zhong. He ends up losing against number 4, and then he goes to the black room. His team has enough chips that they don't have to. Number 4 now has enough chips that he doesn't have to, but Zhong, he does. That was the agreement that they made. So So inside the black room, Zhong speaks with this really scarred up man. The man says that he's actually volunteered to be placed in the black room in order to help his team cheat because they can see from a window a couple of the tables, so they can place certain victims against, against their opponents so that they can see the victim's cards, and then they can take them for everything that they're worth. He also reveals that he's got a bag of money as collateral. It's like 100 grand or something in this bag. And he's like, yeah, you should have brought something in here. Like if you wanted your team to get you out, you should have brought some kind of collateral. And there's a reason for that. It's like people are very, very greedy. When you're in here, it's easy for them to ignore you. You have helped your team incredibly throughout the night, and now you're no longer seen by them. You are now a loser. You're already here. So it's very, very low chances that they will end up helping you when they have the opportunity. Outside, Zhong's team does have 3 extra star chips, and they can use those chips to buy Zhong. But we now learn a truth about 4-2. He reveals that he made up his entire backstory. He faked it all. He was actually the bad guy like the whole time, and he's realized that these star chips sell for like $500,000 a pop. So he has 3 of them. That's $1.5 million. He'd much rather have the money than this nobody, right? Than this Zhong guy. He doesn't know who Zhong is. He doesn't know Zhong's life. Why would he care about him? He's got his own thing going on. So he's like, I'm gonna take this, these 3 star chips, and I'm gonna go do whatever I want. Li, good luck. You do whatever you want. But I'm taking these with me. And Li has nothing. He can't do anything. He ends up falling to his knees. He just apologizes, and then he just walks away. Zhong panics, and rightfully he starts panicking, but then all of a sudden he realizes something. He sees the scarred man's friends have come to buy him, and as the scarred man is walking away, Zhong jumps to his feet and tackles the guy, and then he just starts beating the crap out of him. He just starts punching the scarred man in the face over and over and over, and then the scarred man finally, he gets outside to meet up with his friends, and we see what Zhong was doing. He was stealing something from the man. He stole the bandage off of the man's back, knowing that the money in the man's bag was not nearly enough to pay for the man's freedom. And hidden inside of the bandage, we see diamonds, hundreds and hundreds of diamonds, and the team outside starts freaking out. They're like, oh my gosh, buy that guy right now. He's got all of our money, he's got all of our diamonds, get him out right now. And the plan works. Zhong walks out, he throws the diamonds to those players, and then he runs directly up to number 42, and he just starts beating the guy, He pummels his face and over, he takes the star chips, and then Zhong, he's a good guy. He ends up going back to the black room, and he buys one of the older guys who got tricked into becoming, a slave in the black room, basically. He goes back and he buys that guy. He's just like, hey, go tell your son that you love him yourself. And then he just walks off the ship, and he goes to find the girl of his dream. He goes back to the hospital, and he finds her, and he ends up proposing, and they live happily ever after. Of course, also at the end, there's like an after credit scene, and then we find out that apparently Anderson had killed Zhong's dad, or was associated with killing Zhong's dad. It's kind of just sprinkled in there, which is why I'm also just sprinkling it in there. It's not drawn a lot of attention to throughout the movie. It's kind of coming out of nowhere, but apparently it's got something to do with that anime clown thing or something. And then we also see that there's going to be a sequel to this movie, but nothing's been revealed about that. So, hey, that's the end of the movie! Yay, we made it! Animal World is a movie that takes a not so serious concept incredibly serious, but it also takes a lot of very serious concepts not serious at all. Like, it takes them with over-the-top humor and violence. It's a great lesson on trust, it's a great lesson on naivety, and it's a great lesson on whether that naivety is purposeful or whether it's accidental, or if it's due to habits. It's also a really good showcase on desperation. It shows what a lot of people would do in order to maintain their lifestyles, in order to maintain their addictions. Like, it shows how over the top we all will go for the things that we just like to do but don't necessarily need. This movie, it's a ton of fun. I highly recommend it for anybody who wants to see just how far rock, paper, scissors can really go. But yeah, as always, thank you guys so much for watching. If you had a good time watching this with me, then please leave a like as well as subscribe. I will have more coming in the future. But yeah, until next time, I hope you guys just have a wonderful day. Bye-bye now.